Hi everyone, Bren here. Welcome to this week's video where I finally get to give you an update on the hyacinth bean plants which I sowed back in spring. Plus I'll share with you my top tip for getting great germination on carrot seeds. We'll also check out a pumpkin which I discovered growing amongst the nasturtium patch. So please just sit back, relax for a few minutes and let's get into it now. I know these flowers aren't much to look at. They've been really affected by all of the rain. They're delicate flowers which look very similar to sweet peas, have had their petals blemish and turn brown pretty much as soon as the blooms open. I'm almost certain this has happened because of all the moisture. But despite their appearance, I am so happy with them because it's my very first time growing this plant. So what you're actually looking at are the blooms from the LabLab or hyacinth bean plant, which I sowed back in springtime. And even though the flowers seem to not be able to cope with all the water, the foliage and the plant itself appears to be extremely healthy and so vigorous. As far as I can remember, there's only about 1 or 2 plants in this bed and it has just taken over. I was really curious to see how this plant would grow here in my area because it actually originates from Africa, which has a very similar climate to where I live. As well as it being a lovely ornamental with these flowers, it actually is edible too. You can see here and over here the start of a bean pod developing. Here's another one that I picked where they are even bigger. I believe these pods with the beans inside them can get much larger than this one. When I was reading a few articles about this plant, there was always an emphasis on the consumption of the beans. So you have to be really careful when you eat them. Pretty much when they're small, that's fine, but once they get any bigger you have to go through this process of cooking them a certain way because they can be quite toxic. Knowing that makes me a bit nervous to even eat them when they are this size, because what is immature, I don't know. I'm gonna have to look into it a bit further. I have to say that my main intention for growing this hyacinth bean plant was for the flowers to harvest and put into garden posies. This is a very popular plant for cut flower growers for a number of reasons. One being it's very high yielding, so per plant you can get quite a number of stems. In my experience growing it here for the first year, I would say each plant has produced at least 20 to 30 stems, which is quite good. Also, as I mentioned earlier, it's a climber, so it takes up less garden space growing upwards. Another feature of this plant is that the stems can be quite long. I did read in one article that they can reach up to 1 meter in length. Actually, I don't want to damage too many of my little carrot seedlings, I'll show you them in a sec, but one of these stems was extremely long enough to have me curious to grab the measuring tape. I think it might be this one. Grab the measuring tape and let's just see its exact length. So I'm starting the tape off just where the first set of flowers were, and now they're little pods, and it's actually not as long as I thought it would be. If you come down here to the end, it's approximately 54 centimeters. Not bad. I am going to keep an eye on this and see if I can find any that are longer. If I do discover one, I'll show it to you next week. Next up, I'm going to quickly show you what I've got growing in this bed and give you a couple of tips when it comes to growing carrots. And speaking of carrots, down here are lots and lots of little carrot seedlings growing in this half, or the majority I would say, of the bed. And then over on the side I have a few fennel plants, 3 in here, there's one there. I will probably only be harvesting 2 of them and I'll leave the 3rd one in the bed to go to flower because I absolutely love fennel flowers and this beautiful foliage which I could add to garden posies. We do like the bulbous part. It's really nice shredded up. I've also tried out, roasting it, cutting it into the quarters and roasting it that way. Really delicious. So I may even plant a few more of these because 2 really isn't that many, is it? And beside them I have some of this, which is a red vein sorrel plant. It's actually been growing in this bed for, oh, I would guess around 2 years. I have actually hacked the whole thing back a couple of times and it always resprouts. So, you know, a plant like that, inedible in the garden, that's that hardy, I always like having it. Although I have to admit, I'm not crazy about the flavour. But, you know, if you pick a few of these leaves and saute them, it's not too bad. Back to the carrots, not much to look at the moment, but I'm pretty happy with the germination. So in this section I have planted all of the same variety. I do have the label here which I accidentally left outside, so it's very faded. They're called Purple Sun. It's a hybrid in F1. You can't really tell from the picture, it's looking very grey, but they're actually a purple coloured carrot. So carrots need moisture for the seeds to sprout. It can be difficult to keep the soil in these beds constantly moist, but one trick that works well for me is after you've sown your carrot seeds, cover the bed with a material which traps in the moisture. I've used old blankets in the past. I've seen other people use planks of wood, or in this case I used some cardboard, and it's pretty simple. You just wet the soil in the bed, then sow your seeds, cover them lightly with some more soil, then cover the entire bed with a layer of this cardboard. You leave it on there for about a week. Then after 7 days or so, you have a quick peek, see if you can see any little seedlings. If there are seedlings there, remove the cardboard completely. If you're still waiting for germination, you know, to see any little sprouts, leave the cardboard on for a few more days and then check maybe after another 3 days or so. And then at that stage, you should start seeing your little seedlings. I was heading over towards a pumpkin that I discovered when I was tidying up, and I've got distracted by these. I have a few oranges. I didn't notice this before. It's starting to colour up now. Remember back in October, or you may be new to the channel, we had this absolutely terrible storm that destroyed a lot of the plants in the garden, and it actually came from that direction across. So this part of the tree was protected, meaning that the immature fruit at the time didn't get knocked off. So although I will not have hundreds of oranges this year, at least I still will have a few, maybe 20 or 30, which is, you know, I'm very grateful for, considering they could have all been taken off. And the tree's still doing well actually. It seems to have recovered. I'm now over on the opposite side, so I was just over there. Sorry about the glare, the sun is full on today. So this is the section of the tree that got copped most of the wind and the hailstones. You can see there's a lot of fresh green growth on it, which is wonderful. Some of the branches are still taking a bit of time to recover, but they'll get there. Okay, so this is a messy garden. Look at the nasturtiums taking over the place. The pumpkin I want to show you is just over in that spot. Here it is. It's quite a small variety pumpkin, well, mid-size maybe. I think they can grow to about 1.5–2 kilos in weight. It's a lovely beige colour called Autumn Crown, and inside the flesh is meant to be a really lovely bright orange colour, but you can see the stem is still quite green, so it's not ready to pick yet, but I don't think it will be too far off, judging by its foliage, which is really heavily diseased and starting to die back, which means hopefully I'll be able to pick this off soon once that browns up. Since I'm over in this spot, you can see on this archway I have some more of the hyacinth bean plants. Some of them have gone to seed pod and there are still a few flowers on them too. Do you remember last week I harvested this glass gem corn? Well, I picked another one that I think is the most beautiful one I've grown so far, and I can't wait to show it to you. Here it is. Oh, I just think it is magical to think nature created such beauty and I get to enjoy it here in my garden. Well, actually, you know what I've done with this one, because I love it so much, I've left it on the windowsill in our kitchen, and I maybe at least once a day, maybe sometimes a bit more actually, I go over and I just grab it and stare at it because it makes me so happy. I mean, it's just like a fairy tale, isn't it? Like whimsical beauty. Well, we've come to the end of this week's garden update. Before I head off, I just wanted to say, if you do have any carrot growing questions, you can pop them in the comments down below. I'm happy to answer them. I did share a lot of tips and tricks around this time last year when I was sowing my carrots. Maybe what I could do is do a completely separate video, like a carrot growing guide, where I share how I have success and how I approach growing them, perhaps, if that's something you're interested in. Otherwise, I hope you all have a great week. I will talk to you again next Friday.